This is The Process Shot. I'm Michael. I don't own anything made of silver, and I've seen The Wolfman, another in a string of Universal horror films. Directed by George Waggner and released in 1941, this film follows Larry Talbot as he returns home to help take care of family matters. He ends up finding himself attracted to a local girl named Gwen, who he takes along with one of her friends to a traveling fortune teller. Gwen's friend ends up being frightened, running away from the group, and tragically becomes a victim to a wild wolf attack. Larry fights off the wolf, but is bitten in the process, beginning a further series of tragedies and terrors with him at the center, as he tries to determine whether or not the local legends are true, and that a man bitten by a wolf will himself become one. Obviously, this story is pretty much the basic Wolfman story, which later versions of the myth have come to adopt and adapt. The film makes good use of this legend, though it isn't always perfect. Much of the film is spent less on the actual horror of the Wolfman's reign of terror, and more on Larry as a human, which is actually where the movie succeeds for the most part. The film tends not to focus on the Wolfman's murders, but rather the aftermath, with additional attention on Larry's own actions and growing paranoia during the fallout of these events. It shifts the film from traditional horror to something a bit more psychological, which is again a nice change of pace for the Universal horror series, though by now I imagine they've had time to figure out what works and what doesn't. In any case, the build-up of Larry's fear is actually pretty compelling to watch, thanks in part to actor Lon Chaney Jr.'s performance really being able to sell the character as an exasperated man caught up in events beyond him, trying to figure out if he's actually going crazy or if something much worse is happening. The film's visuals do help to sell this idea as well, though unfortunately the presentation of this mental breakdown isn't consistent across the whole film. There is still an effectively frightening look to the film's set pieces during nighttime scenes, though, which really help to sell the mystery and darkness of these settings despite being rather well lit. Because otherwise you can't see what's going on. In any case, the overall art design of the film does help to sell the viewer on the inherent horrors of the film's events, though the design of the Wolfman himself really could have used a bit more work to make him appear more animalistic. He just looks more like a really hairy human instead. It doesn't help too much that these makeup effects are used sparingly, though then again, this may have been intentional to help try and build the idea of Larry as mentally ill rather than cursed. In fact, you don't even see him physically transforming until later in the film, in a process that is rather neat, but does leave you wishing there were more like that in earlier scenes. Overall, I think that's the best way to describe The Wolfman. It's a film that is convincing and compelling enough in its story to leave you feeling somewhat satisfied, but at the same time you wish there were a bit more to be had by the end. The Wolfman, George Waggner, 1941. 2.5 stars. I'd still recommend it. Again, if you're marathoning the Universal horror films, then it's essential, but otherwise it's a story that's been done better elsewhere. I think. I'm not really sure. That's it for this review. If you liked it, be sure to leave a like. If you've got something to add, leave a comment. As always, subscribe to the channel if you'd like to see more reviews in the future. I suppose I should be glad I can't see the moon from inside. But then again, that just means that this place has no windows. Then again, that also means no monsters can sneak through them. On the other hand, they may already be inside. Of course, maybe the real monster was inside me the whole time.